I think people, with the run up to Christmas at the moment, start to think, "Oh, I'll worry about it later. We don't need to worry about it. The world's going to wind down. We'll deal with it next year." And that's not what we're seeing at the moment at all. If people are ignoring their tax debt.
We've seen a lot more businesses coming to us with statements of claim, statutory demands, and so forth. And so there's no question that the ATO are moving more quickly on this, but they're also moving more quickly to, I guess, what we call the really serious enforcement action. You've got your four horsemen of the apocalypse with your director penalty notices, your garnishee notices, your credit reporting. But the ultimate thing for, at least for a business and an individual, is when they get sued in the courts for either to wind the company up or a statement of claim. And I think you're right. There is that tendency, and we have to pick up the pieces in the new year for businesses to go, "Oh, it's Christmas time, it's summer, summer in Melbourne as well." And I get it. It's been a long year. People want to have a break, but this is the worst time to be ignoring your ATO obligations if you have debt.
Yeah, absolutely. So a perfect example of that is I spoke to a hairdresser that had a couple of different salons about 6 months ago, and explained to them we could probably get them a 3-year arrangement. They wouldn't need any upfront payment. Their debt wasn't overly high. It was sort of sitting at around the 200,000 mark, which is a lot of money, but not in the extraordinary range like we often see. They decided not to proceed with our help. They were just going to see what happened with the ATO. They'd had a couple of different recovery actions against them. Fast forward, and the ATO actually issued a statutory demand against them. And so because they ignored it, and they'd ignored all of that recovery action, when they then came back to us and said, "We've now got this from the ATO," which, as we know, is the first step in winding that business up, the outcome that we could achieve for them was very different. You no longer can get the 3 years. We can absolutely still stop them being wound up, but it's a much shorter and tighter time frame for that payment plan than they would have otherwise had, and an upfront payment was needed as well.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's almost like seeing that 6 month period before was that last window that they
Yep.
had that option. And it's similar. We've had, I think, even just in the last 2 weeks, we would have had at least half a dozen businesses that have come to us, and some of them have been sole traders, and some of them have been companies in some form of either stat demand or if it's a statement of claim. We had a broker came to us last week, and similarly, and the shame about it is that she's got very strong cash flow and could actually pay off a long-term payment plan on her ear, but again, ignored it, and then finally decided it was time to do something when a statement of claim was served on the business. And again, as you say, something we could have got a long-term payment plan for is now looking at a much shorter term. Now, she's lucky because she has capacity to pay it, but now the ATO were requiring a significant upfront, which we wouldn't have needed even 2 months ago or a month ago before the statement of claim was served. And now she's having to look at raising finance to raise that lump sum, which could have been totally avoided. But look, the good outcome, or the good, I guess, result is that at the end of it, we will get her into a payment plan, and we will get her out the other side. We'll be able to look at the interest, but it's a much more stressful, I guess, experience than it might have otherwise been. And certainly, as you say, the parameters have come down quite significantly.
Yeah, much more onerous. I think that's also another big shift we've seen in probably the last 2 months. Is there's a lot of people that will have received a director penalty notice, which is making them personally liable for the company's debt, that have ignored that. And the big shift, I think, as I said, especially in the last 2 months, is that they're now getting proceedings issued against them personally. Not necessarily huge debt. I think a lot of people think that if they're under the 500 or under the million, then they won't have further recovery action. But we're seeing a lot of statement of claims, which mean the ATO are suing that individually, personally, for the company's debt, because they've ignored all the other recovery action. They're now personally responsible. They now need to deal with it, and the arrangements that we can get are so much more onerous than if we dealt with it when they'd first received the director penalty notice, or when the company had first had that debt. I think the biggest message that I've been saying, and I'm sure you are, where everywhere we go, is we can deal with these. I know it's embarrassing. I know that it's stressful, but the earlier you deal with it, the earlier you talk to someone, the better arrangement we can get. And the difference in a week, but whether a court proceeding has been issued or a court proceeding hasn't been issued, the financial consequence is just huge.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I spoke to a business this morning. It's a construction company, and they've been caught up in a long-running piece of litigation against the head contractor, who unfortunately is a much bigger company, and we believe are trying to starve them out. They've now got judgment, and they're trying to enforce it. We're lucky we've still caught it at that point before, but he's had credit reporting. He put in a payment arrangement proposal. They did it all themselves, which unfortunately wasn't capable of being accepted by the ATO. It just didn't fit the parameters. That's been refused, and then 2 days later he got lockdown director penalty notices for $250,000. So it came to us via a liquidator who looked at it and said, well, there's no point us liquidating the company because you're on the hook. But the good news is we've caught it before it's hit this point. And so I've said to him, look, we need to move really, really quickly on this matter, because right now a long-term payment plan is still on the table. But if we leave this and next week you get served with a statutory demand, it's no longer on the table. And it's that recurring theme we say is that, and the statistic I always say is that around about 97% of the businesses that we see, we fix. And the 3% are the ones that just really have no capacity and no ability to do it. But you need to engage quickly, and you need to engage properly. And the quickly thing is really, really important. But similarly, this was also an example of they didn't engage properly. They put something to the ATO that didn't comply with the legal practice statement. You and I both know those back the front. And we often see this where they say, we've been dealing with the ATO, we've put these offers in. On their face, they kind of look reasonable, but they just don't meet all the requirements. And, you've heard me say this many times, computer says no. So luckily, they've got to us in time, and the liquidator said, no, we don't need to kill this company. Tax Assure can fix it, but we're in time, and that's great.